Welcome back to the MedTech Snapshot, the one question, one answer, highly digest medical device podcast. In these next coming episodes, we're diving into finance. And in particular, if you look at valuations for startups, how do we develop a valuation that not only is objective, but accurate and defendable? As we get into episode 2, we're then diving into some considerations that startups are going to want to think through as it relates to how you successfully connect with and build relationships with potential investors and acquirers. I think you're going to like this episode, so stay tuned. So, Justin, can you introduce yourself real quick for us?
Hi, my name is Justin Farry. I'm the CFO of Endovascular Engineering. We are a medical device startup. We've closed a 80 million Series C. Before that, I was involved with Axonics from Series A all the way to IPO and eventual sale to Boston Scientific.
My question for you is this. If you were to think about those two groups, potential investors or acquirers, what are 3 things or 3 considerations a startup needs to think about in order to successfully position themselves in front of those two groups of people, our investors and our acquirers?
That's a great question, Travis. So the 3 I would say is 1, and I'll explain on each of them afterwards. 1 is prove the market opportunity. In other words, what am I talking about? Is the TAM and the SAM real? 2, demonstrate you can win. And 3, why will someone pay a premium for you? So let's go to the beginning. Investors and strategics, they want to invest in large markets. The total addressable market is, obviously the entire population of people that can benefit from your product, ignoring everything else, access to the product, funds, etc. The subset of that is your serviceable available market, which is where are the cases being done and how much of that market then can you capture. That needs to be of a size that's attractive to investors and strategics. Equally important is that market growing and is it underpenetrated? So at Axonics and E2, both of these markets, before we entered into them, we did the research and they were growing at 20 to 25% per year. Companies they want to have a large market. 2, it needs to be a growing market. A very important thing to talk about is reimbursement. Has reimbursement been established? Often, early stage companies don't think about reimbursement. And if you're not thinking about reimbursement, it's already too late. If you're planning to go commercial, you need to be thinking about reimbursement 2 years before, because that's how long it takes. Another thing when you're talking about the market is the competitive intensity. So for example, at Axonics, the decision was made when we looked at all different markets we could enter. There was the overactive bladder market, where Medtronic was the sole incumbent, the level of innovation was low, and so the competitive intensity was low, which made it a very attractive market for us to go into. Establishing a sizable and growing market is key. That's number 1. So number 2, demonstrating how you can win. Establishing a body of clinical evidence and improved clinical outcomes is important. Building a strong RP portfolio, and a moat around your RP. What is your regulatory progress? How far have you progressed? Have you achieved any commercial traction? Key, I think everybody knows, is do you have an experienced management team? Do you have a management team in place that has done this before? Because investors, want to have that they're investing in people that they give them confidence that they're going to take this company to the next level. And then capital efficiency. A lot of companies, especially early stage companies, have available to them non-dilutive grant funding. And that's extremely valuable because, as I said, it's non-dilutive, and you achieving these milestones that I'm talking about regarding clinical evidence and regulatory progress without diluting the founder. So that's showing a potential acquirer that's reducing their risk in your demonstration that you can win this race. I think the third thing is you need to show them why should they be paying a premium for you. Are you a good strategic fit for potential acquirers? What is the competitive landscape, which I've talked about? What's the acquisition rationale? Are they acquiring you to fill a technical gap because they need access to innovation, because they need an established sales force? These are really important things. And I think what I want to stress here is successful founders don't think about these strategic decisions after the fact. You think about them, when you're deciding what product to develop, what market to go into. You need to think about what the exit strategy is before you get started. So I just want to stress that.
A lot of times what I see, especially when it relates to a 510K device, is that there's this discussion around how easily can my device fit in the bag of the sales rep for the acquirer, the strategic. That's not always easily done when it comes to a PMA device, which is where you come from, at least from your last stint with Axonics. So can you talk about the two of those, right? Because you just came from PMA, you're now involved with a 510K device. Those are two very different development efforts and go-to-market strategies. How does that impact the way either an investor or acquirer is looking at those two different types of organizations?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It really depends on what the acquirer is looking for. It's very profitable for an acquirer to, as you said, find a company that has a product that can just fit into their existing sales force's, bag. Once you have hot markets that are out there, you can get a strategic that's not in that space, that wants to get into that space because it's a really growing hot market. And so they're going to be looking for a company that has developed the sales force already, because they don't have that sales force on the ground already pushing that product. So it's really you approaching the different strategics and appealing to the different needs that each of them have.